name is Kathy Gibbons. I'm co-founder of 1211 Partners, and I am also an overcomer of sex trafficking. I was introduced to a person who I thought was a friend. I was introduced to him through a mutual friend, actually. And he was a member of a band. Actually, he was the leader of the band. It was a very popular band at that time. They knew everyone, and they just, invited myself and my friends to come hang out with them. And it was fun. But then the invitation started to change. It was no longer, hey, Kathy, come hang out with your friends and we're just gonna get together. It was, Kathy, I just want you to come hang out with me. But for me, this invitation turned into a year-long relationship of literally just spending time with this individual, him getting to know me. He was very concerned about, at the time, what I thought was my well-being, but he would ask me questions about, my history, where I came from, my family, what I liked. And so a year goes on of this false relationship. And towards the end of the year, he invited me to go on a business venture with him. He said that he was going to start his record label, and he wanted me to be a part of it, and he wanted me to be, a part of his team. He couldn't do this without me. He knew exactly what words to use. He was very affirming and validating and inclusive, and he wanted me to be a part of this journey. And I said, of course. And the plan was to leave Houston, Texas, to travel to Dallas, Texas, for just 3 months to meet with some of his investors. I know now that those investors were definitely people that were going to help exploit me. Because as soon as I got to Dallas, Texas, he turned into a complete monster. I don't know if he turned into a monster as much as I think my eyes were open to who he really was at that time. I was myself before he started this process of breaking down and the process of grooming. I was myself. I came from a good home, good family values. I had a great support system. I was very involved in church. I was very involved in school. I was a good person. I knew who I was, and I knew exactly where I wanted to go. After that process of breaking down, after that process of grooming, everything got distorted. All I wanted was him. Once he mastered that, he was able to pour everything in me that he wanted me to be. Manipulation and just all of the toxic things. Everything, my whole life became him. And from there, it just got really bad. I was told to, put on lingerie or get nude, and pictures were taken of me. I don't know where those pictures went. I know that they went somewhere online. Different men would come to the room, and I was raped multiple times, and then I was forced to go out on the street. And it was there that I truly thought that I was going to die. I was trafficked in every form, through brothels, hotel rooms, motel rooms, houses, commercial buildings, all of the things. And at that time, I didn't know what trafficking was. For me, I just thought it was a really bad relationship. And this went on. The 3 months turned into almost a year of my life, of every day constantly being abused and being assaulted and raped and sold. And finally, there was an individual that he trafficked as well, and she was ill, and she started to get really sick mentally, and she was having like a breakdown, and to the point where he couldn't handle her. So I convinced him, and I know that this is nothing but the grace of God, but I convinced him to get her back to Houston, where her doctors were familiar with her history. And I think because of the familiar surroundings in Houston, when I returned to Houston, I think that exasperated some of the trauma that I experienced. And I too then began to have a really activated moment where I was not myself, and he didn't want to deal with it because he was afraid that it was going to bring him too much attention. So he actually allowed me to call my brother and my sister-in-law to come and pick me up from the hotel room in which we were. And he did this because he knew that I would go back. He knew that I was completely broken. He knew that at that time, I was his. That's pretty much his perception of me. And so he said, okay, go home. I'll come pick you up in the morning and we'll hit the road again. And my answer was, okay. But what he did not know and what he underestimated was the power of my support system and my God, because my family, though I was mute and didn't want to talk about it, it wouldn't look anyone in the eye, even when I got home, they just knew something was wrong. They didn't know what was wrong, but they knew that something bad was terribly happened to me, right? And so they would not let me go back with him. And through time apart and through time away from him is how I was absolutely able to exit my trafficking situation, and now I'm an overcomer. The church is actually very near and dear to my heart. It's a big part of my story, both positive ways. The church is strongly involved in my story of overcoming, my journey of overcoming. But transparently speaking, while I was being trafficked, I did encounter churches. In my trafficking situation, fleeing from Dallas back to Houston, we stopped at two churches physically, and I called a church number to ask for prayer so I could visit them to pull over at a church. And I went into the church, and I was clearly, something was wrong, right? I was in flip-flops and short shorts and a tank top, and I was clearly something, was wrong. And I remember that first church that I went in, and I was asking for help with my eyes, and they sent me away. They sent us away and sent me back with my trafficker. The second church did the same thing, sent me back with my trafficker, and there was an opportunity to say, are you cold? Do you want a blanket? Do you need some water? Because at that time, I would have accepted that help. Those are the two times that I would have probably accepted the help, because I was afraid in that situation. I would have said, I don't know, I think I need, And this is not to shame the church at all. This is a way of me saying how important the Go Box is. Because through the trainings, if I can, just thinking back, if those churches would have had the training, if they would have known what to look for, if they would have had the tools, they would have probably saw me not as just a crazy girl that looks weird, but they would have saw me as someone who needs help, a potential trafficking victim. And then I would have gotten the services that I needed at that time. We didn't have Go Boxes back then, but we have them now. So my charge for the church would be to respond, to show up. This is an ugly topic. No one wants to talk about it, right? But I feel like if we think about ending trafficking for the one versus, ending it for every single victim, if you just focus on your community, if I can end it for one person, then you've ended trafficking. And you have the power to do that by just engaging in these conversations, being aware, equipping yourselves to know the signs and the tools. As a church, that's that's the least that we can do, right? The least that we can do is pay attention. And that's the ask, just pay attention. And, I think that the Go Box is a perfect tool for people, especially in the church, just to pay attention.